There's a lot of discussion about junk science, debunked science, that might not be as reliable as we once thought it was, but they've been used to convict people. And in one particular case that we've spoken about before on this channel, Jimmie Duncan, not only did bite mark science play a role in his conviction in 1998, in 2024, a team of appellate attorneys with the help of the Innocence Project raised an issue that there was video evidence showing dentist Michael West examining the body of the victim, 23-month-old Haley Oliveaux, where he was pressing a mold of Jimmie Duncan's teeth into post-mortem skin of Haley. That recording was never shown to the jury that convicted Duncan of first-degree murder and sentenced him to death in 1998. But it was critical to those post-conviction arguments raised in 2024. During those proceedings, the video was presented as evidence that the bite marks used at trial had been created, manufactured. They weren't originally there, meaning Jimmie Duncan couldn't actually have been the cause. That series of litigation ended with the district court finding factual innocence in 2025 and a unanimous Louisiana Supreme Court decision affirming that finding on June 29, 2026. So right around the corner from when we're making this video. And so if you've wondered, why would somebody fake evidence? I don't like to wonder those things either. I like to think that it doesn't happen, but unfortunately it does. So I think this video coming to light, thanks to NBC for public viewing, we're going to take a look at it, I think is really important for that realization that just because we wouldn't do something doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Before we get into that though, let's do a quick rewind on the background of the case, the how we got here. So in December 1993 in West Monroe, Louisiana, 23-month-old Haley Oliveaux died in a bathtub while in the care of her mother's boyfriend. That's Jimmie Duncan. Duncan said that he left her briefly to go wash dishes, but when he came back, she was unresponsive. Haley was pronounced dead at the hospital. Duncan was initially charged with negligent homicide, but after the body was examined by pathologist Stephen Hain and dentist Michael West, the charges were raised to first-degree murder. Now, we did a stream on, it started off talking about the appellate arguments in this case, but we did a long deep dive on bite mark analysis, junk science, and specifically Stephen Hain and Michael West. So I'm going to link to that in the description. It's like a 3-hour deep dive into that if you want to go check that out. But to keep it short here, pathologist Stephen Hain reports that he sees evidence of SA and forced drowning. Dentist Dr. Michael West reported that bite marks were on the child's body and that they matched Duncan's teeth. And it was those bite marks that became the main physical evidence at trial. Ultimately, Duncan was convicted in 1998 and he was sentenced to death. The thing is, West recorded his examination. And there was early coverage of this video by journalist Radley Balco in the 2000s. He tried to draw attention to this footage and what I would call the obvious issues with it. Now, NBC's Dan Slepian, he obtains this and he just released portions and put together this great, it's 13 minutes, but it's jam-packed with context of the case and it's linked in the description. But here we go. Let's see what the jury didn't see.
So you hadn't known about the videotape and you hadn't seen it before the hearing started?
I absolutely hadn't seen it.
Sharp allowed the tape to be played at the hearing. A warning, this video of a dead toddler in a morgue is difficult to watch, so we've concealed some of it.
18 December 1990.
So note that they just said the 18th of December 1993. That's presumably West's voice speaking.
It begins with Haley lying on a table. West is examining her body. Her cheeks are blemish-free.
But is it fair to say that there was no bruising or marking or bite marks on her face at the beginning of that video?
I think that's absolutely fair. The body was
absolutely fair to say. That is the trial court judge, who's now retired, saying it's absolutely fair to say that there were no blemishes on Haley on December 18th when this video starts.
Was not possessed of any markings.
5 minutes in, the camera turns off. The recording resumes the next morning, and
now we're a day later.
Now there's a bruise on Haley's cheek. Then, for the next 20 minutes, West is seen pressing the mold of Duncan's teeth into Haley's face and body, roughly 50 times.
As you're sitting on the bench, watching that video, what is going through your mind?
I was aghast. I'm left in a state of consternation, total consternation.
Is it fair to say that Dr. West is manufacturing and creating the evidence on this child's body?
He's absolutely creating marks on that baby's body.
Do you think what you saw by Dr. West on that tape was a crime by him?
It very well could be.
But West has said he wasn't creating any marks. that the tape shows what he calls his direct comparison technique, where he's simply comparing Duncan's dental mold to marks he claimed were already there. Marks, he says, that a layman might not see.
You be the judge. I agree with retired Judge Sharp here. I think he's absolutely creating the marks. I mean, December 18th, we didn't have molds of Duncan's teeth. Camera goes off, we come back, we have a mold in hand, and there's a bruise. There's a mark. And this is a case that I've sat with for a while. I followed several of the post-conviction proceedings and the developments there. Not only did the jury not see that video, but Dr. West didn't testify at Duncan's trial. He was actually under suspension from the American Board of Forensic Odontology at the time. So prosecutors ended up calling a different expert who hadn't seen the recording, wasn't present for whatever West was doing during this examination. And so you get the secondary expert testimony that's just saying like, oh, this is what it shows. These bite marks consistent with Duncan's teeth. And then the jury convicts. Unfortunately, justice takes the scenic route. So after this conviction in 1998, Duncan exhausts his direct appeals and his early post-conviction fight for relief. Because it was a capital case, he went through like a multi-stage review, still got him nowhere. Over the years, there's some additional evidence that develops, and we talked about that in the longer stream. Again, that's linked in the description. But a jailhouse informant, what's a wrongful conviction without a jailhouse informant? Well, there's a recantation of the jailhouse informant. And then also surfacing, which I think is critical, is the medical history of Haley's prior head injuries and possible seizures. That could explain, if not Duncan, then who or what would cause a child to lose their life suddenly. Then over the years, of course, since 1998, there's been a growing scientific consensus that bite mark comparison of this type is unreliable. And then there were critiques specifically of both Haynes and West's method, which again, big part of the longer deep dive we did, but these efforts went nowhere. In 2021, Louisiana enacted a factual innocence post-conviction statute, Act 104, and this created a clearer path for claims based on new reliable evidence showing factual innocence. An income, new appellate attorneys, the help of the Innocence Project, and advocacy, members of the Oliveaux family were expressing belief in Duncan's innocence. So there's a lot of momentum building up here. But of course, once you've already been convicted, it takes a lot of momentum to unwind the conviction. In 2024, Duncan is finally granted a new evidentiary hearing because of this factual innocence framework from this new legislation. There was a 6-day evidentiary hearing in front of Judge Alvin Sharp, we just saw in the NBC video. The examination video, West videos played. And Duncan also called experts to testify that not only is bite mark evidence no longer scientifically valid or defensible, these marks weren't present in hospital photos, and that Steve Haynes' autopsy conclusions were unsupported. And partnering that with this possible link to Haley's medical history, prior seizures, other injuries, there was expert testimony at these hearings that the death was consistent with accidental drowning. And there were also some arguments about ineffective assistance of counsel raised. Fast forward to April of 2025. Judge Sharp grants Duncan's request for post-conviction relief. So he vacates the conviction and the death sentence. He finds Duncan met his burden by a clear and convincing standard. And clear and convincing is substantially more likely to be true than not. You've got to have a high belief in the truth of this. So not quite beyond reasonable doubt, but up there. The government sought review of this decision. They appealed. So for a while, Duncan was still held in custody. And separate proceedings had to take place for him to fight to get some bail, which he's eventually granted. After 27 years in custody, on death row, and after a few months of having been declared factually innocent, because the state was fighting that ruling by Judge Sharp, Duncan was still in custody until end of November-ish, like holiday time in 2025. On April 28th, 2026, the Louisiana Supreme Court heard oral arguments, and on June 29th, they issued a unanimous opinion affirming Judge Sharp's ruling in full. So the court held that the post-conviction evidence centered on the West video, the discrediting of the forensic methods, and the medical evidence of accidental drowning undermine the core factual premise of the state's case. It also affirms that Duncan proved by clear and convincing evidence that no rational jury would convict him of first-degree murder beyond a reasonable doubt, had this stuff been presented at trial. So currently, the conviction, the death sentence, that's vacated. Duncan is free. But the state indicated it still seeks to retry the case. I saw that reported by Caitlin Manis for Ouachita Citizen, and that was reported before NBC put out this video footage. So let's see if that sentiment changes. It was District Attorney Steve Tu. And Tu said that we want to try him for murder. I don't know if we can try him for capital murder or second-degree murder yet. That's going to be a function where we're trying to evaluate who are the witnesses that are still available. Obviously, we'll need some different experts, and that's where we are. So, Duncan spent 27 years on death row. This video is now out for public viewing, although NBC has not published all of it. It's stuff that the jury that convicted Duncan never saw. I'm also going to link in the description the Louisiana Supreme Court opinion and the longer stream from last year that I mentioned earlier in this video as well. So if you're interested in diving into more of this case history and or Stephen and Michael, their escapades in their work as experts and medical examiners, dentists, definitely was very enlightening. So again, keeping this video a bit shorter just to focus on this video evidence that is now available for us to view. I think it's so important because it's one thing to say, look, we have questions now about the way bite mark analysis has been used in forensics and criminal convictions and criminal prosecutions. I think it's another thing. I think a lot of people want to believe and have faith that humanity is generally good. That a professional wouldn't just be out there all willy-nilly manufacturing evidence to force a conviction. And of course, I'll be following to see if I see any updates from Mr. Tu, if he has a change of heart, or if he decides to continue trying to find a way to prosecute this case. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for taking an interest in wrongful conviction cases and having a justice system where we actually seek justice and not just convicting somebody because somebody had to have done it and we need some closure. But it doesn't get us to the truth. So take care, everybody. Have a good one and see you next time.